Now, that's the deal with the Clinton State Department and the Obama administration. They ignored this FBI investigation, what this informant was telling them was going on the inside, and inexplicably, they approved in 2010 giving Vladimir Putin control of over 20% of America's uranium market. We had the informant warning us on the inside the entire time. Nobody listened. And the clueless media, they ignored this Russian interference. Now, this only matters, apparently, if the Russians are involved, if you can use it to bludgeon President Trump politically. Now, sadly, Putin and Russia, they were successful in 2010. They got that uranium. Now, even though we already have a shortage of uranium in America, we have to import uranium. Now, let's get back to this indictment. It lays out allegations that begin in 2014, where Russian nationals, they were working together with a troll farm located in St. Petersburg, Russia, trying to influence the election. Why wouldn't they after they got uranium? Now, they did this by, quote, posing as U.S. persons and creating false U.S. personas, operated social media pages and groups designed to attract U.S. audiences. Now, these Russian trolls also stage political rallies while pretending to be American political activists and paid Americans in the U.S. to attack certain candidates. This operation had a monthly budget of over $1 million. It included Russians that were operating inside this country, just like they were in 2009. In this case, again, the Russians got caught red-handed. And as we have been explaining, well, there were no Americans, including anybody from the Trump campaign, that were knowingly involved, and these efforts did not impact the election results. Now, here's what the Deputy Attorney General, Rod Rosenstein, said earlier today.
Now, there is no allegation in this indictment that any American was a knowing participant in this illegal activity. There is no allegation in the indictment that the charged conduct altered the outcome of the 2016 election.
And all you people in the media that paid no attention to Putin and his operatives in 2009 and 10 and Uranium One, pay close attention to what Rosenstein says here. Take a listen.
The Russians also recruited and paid real Americans to engage in political activities, promote political campaigns, and stage political rallies. The defendants and their co-conspirators pretended to be grassroots activists. According to the indictment, the Americans did not know that they were communicating with Russians. After the election, the defendants allegedly staged rallies to support the president-elect while simultaneously staging rallies to protest his election. For example, the defendants organized one rally to support the president-elect and another rally to oppose him, both in New York on the same day.
Both in New York the same day. So the Russians were actually organizing rallies and engaging in political activities for both campaigns. And after the election, they were seeking to undermine then-President-elect Donald Trump. Here's how the indictment lays it out. Quote, in or around November of 2016, defendants and their co-conspirators organized a rally in New York through one organization, controlled groups designed to show your support for President-elect Donald Trump, held on or about November 12, 2016. At the exact same time, defendants and their co-conspirators, through another organization-controlled group, they organized a rally also in New York called Trump is Not My President, held on or about November 12, 2016. Now, similarly, defendants and their co-conspirators organized a rally entitled Charlotte Against Trump in Charlotte, North Carolina, held on or about November 19, 2016. So this wasn't as one-sided as the media is trying to make this out to be. In fact, this indictment continues to prove that the media has been wrong and lying to the American people. No evidence for over a year now, pushing their bizarre conspiracy theories about Trump-Russia collusion that, with no evidence, is non-existent. You may remember a lot of this.
A dizzying 24 hours in the Russia investigation, no longer just inching toward the president. This morning, it is more like careening.
I think this is a potentially more dangerous situation than Watergate, and we're at a very dangerous moment. And that's because we are looking at the possibility that the President of the United States and those around him during an election campaign colluded with a hostile foreign power to undermine the basis of our democracy.
Donald Trump is afraid. A political hurricane is out there at sea for him. We'll call it Hurricane Vladimir, if you will, the whole Russian thing.
This is evidence of willingness to commit collusion.
There's outright treason. I mean, there is no question that what he is doing is giving aid and comfort to the enemy.
Tom Friedman said the election hacking is at the caliber of a Pearl Harbor or a 9/11. Do you agree with that?
I completely agree with that.
Donald Trump now sits at the threshold of impeachment.
It's been over a year of these types of comments without any evidence. Facts obviously don't matter to the fake news media. No evidence of collusion, and this indictment says that no American, no member of the Trump campaign wittingly tried to help the Russians. Now, I know a lot of people are shocked by this indictment, and there was a gigantic collective gasp from liberals, the mainstream media, when this news came out earlier today. Why is anybody surprised? That's my question. Russian election interference, it goes back decades. And as we have been reporting, an FBI informant that is now talking to 3 separate congressional committees in just the last couple of weeks, well, he discovered back in 2009, undercover for 6 years, all told in his life 30 years, but he noticed in 2009 there was an informant with the FBI about a plan that Vladimir Putin had to corner America's uranium market. This all started in 2009. Then he discovered there was bribery, kickbacks, money laundering, racketeering, and other types of extortion going on. The FBI, then run by Robert Mueller, they were being informed every step of the way, and they did nothing. Robert Mueller has some questions to answer. And this informant is also saying Russia paid millions to a lobbying firm, all in an attempt to influence then-Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. That company, APCO Worldwide, they deny the allegations. Now, this Putin-led operation back in 2009, nobody in the media is telling you, started over years before, a year and a half before the CFIUS board. That's 9 Obama federal agencies, including Hillary at Secretary of State, Eric Holder at Justice, approved the sale of Uranium One. And key players involved in that decision, they should have known all of this was going on, but they approved it anyway. And the real question is, knowing all of this, knowing Putin's efforts in 2009, and knowing we didn't have enough uranium in America, why would CFIUS and all these agencies and the Obama administration, why did they allow Russia, a hostile foreign entity, to take control of 20% of our uranium, the foundational material to make nuclear weapons? And we're supposed to be surprised at today's indictments? Now, here's the other aspect of all of this the left, the corrupt media will never tell you about. The Russian influence campaign, all right, this that they told you about today goes back to 2014. Where hell was the Obama administration? What did they do then to stop this? Now, remember, NBC News reported after the election the Obama administration didn't do more to stop Russia because they thought Hillary was going to win. That's NBC. So, in other words, it sounds like the Obama administration, they were complicit in this. They dropped the ball, and they were definitely, in this case, more warning signs you can shake a stick at. In April 2016, the House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, he warned America's inability to predict Vladimir Putin's plans would be, quote, the biggest intelligence failure that we have had since 9/11. How right, sadly, he was. Now, Barack Obama needs to tell you, the American people, what he knew and when he knew it. Maybe Obama didn't take the Russian threat seriously. Remember back during the 2012 election, during a debate, he was mocking Mitt Romney. Mitt Romney was warning about the Russian threat. Take a look.
Governor Romney, I'm glad that you recognize that al-Qaeda is a threat, because a few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, you know, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
Yeah, a year later, Putin has people bribing, extorting, money laundering, all in America to get involved in our uranium markets. Given what we know now, President Obama, the top members of his administration, they owe you an explanation. Hillary owes you an explanation, because what this did is a dereliction of duty. They failed to stop a major national security threat. We did reach out to Obama's office for comment. Shockingly, we haven't heard back. And another example of Russian collusion, of course, is the Clinton bought and paid for dossier filled with Russian and Russian government lies and propaganda. Now, Hillary Clinton and the DNC, they shelled out, what, over $12 million to fund this salacious and, of course, unverified dossier that was later used as the bulk of information to get a FISA warrant to spy on the Trump campaign. The same dossier, the Republican memos found that the FBI used to lie in that FISA court to get that warrant to spy on a member of the Trump campaign. The FBI, Fusion GPS, nobody verified what was in the dossier. To this day, we haven't proven a thing in that dossier. And we now know that the bulk of that FISA application was made up of a political hit piece document put together by a former British spy, Christopher Steele, using Russian government sources, and some of Hillary's best friend as sources. Now, also breaking this hour, a lot of developments tonight as it relates to the case of Bruce and Nellie Orr. Now, we first reported on this husband and wife duo after it was discovered that Bruce Orr, remember the high-ranking Justice Department official, remember he passed on the anti-Trump Steele dossier. He gave it to the FBI. It was his wife, Nellie, working for Fusion GPS on the dossier. And according to a report in the Daily Caller, Bruce Orr, he attempted to hide now his wife's involvement with Fusion GPS by not disclosing on required legal ethic forms that Nellie Orr was being paid by Fusion GPS. Instead, Orr listed his wife as a cybersecurity analyst and did not disclose Fusion GPS in any way. But that's not all. According to the report, Bruce Orr, quote, did not obtain a conflict of interest waiver from his superiors at the Justice Department. So was Bruce Orr intentionally covering up his wife's involvement with Fusion GPS and that Russian dossier? And given that intentionally falsifying government ethics documents can result in jail time, is Mueller's investigation? Are they going to charge Bruce Orr? Don't hold your breath. Now, also tonight, new information about James Comey's memos. Byron York, Washington Examiner, points out a very interesting article with the headline, "Why are the Comey memos secret?" Now, Byron York is reporting that in July of 2017, the FBI did allow lawmakers to see the memo about Comey's version of conversations that he had with President Trump, later leaked to the professor that leaked to the FBI that led to Robert Mueller. But anyway, the FBI made sure the information in these memos was severely restricted. Why would that be? Now, Comey testified under oath that he gave the memos to that friend. They leaked it to the New York Times in the hopes that Robert Mueller would be appointed a special counsel. It happened. Now, you would think that if those memos were so explosive and so damning and so damaging and proved obstruction of justice, which we keep hearing about, like Comey and the media and the Democrats are all claiming, that why don't we release the memos? But they're keeping them secret for a reason. Take a look at how Congressman Trey Gowdy, South Carolina, described the memos back in December.
The obstruction of justice, remember, that started being discussed when Comey had these memos that he said he made. I've read the memos. I've read every one of Comey's memos. They would be defense exhibit A in an obstruction of justice case, not prosecution exhibit, defense exhibit A. If Comey felt obstructed, he did a masterful job of keeping it out of any of his memos.
Defense Exhibit A. So the entire so-called scandal with the memo created by Comey, perpetrated by Democrats and the left-wing media complicit with the Democrats, it's absolutely a farce. It's a mere political tactic. It's been used to damage President Trump and undermine his presidency. Now, all the Comey memos should be released. What are they hiding? Now, also tonight, while today's indictment showed that Mueller is conducting serious work in the ongoing Russia investigation, which, by the way, nobody should be surprised about, there are still deeply concerning issues surrounding the team of liberal anti-Trump partisan investigators that Mueller tapped to lead his probe. Now, this includes Mueller's top prosecutor, Andrew Weissmann, or as the New York Times calls him, Mueller's pit bull. Now, for months, we've been reporting on Weissmann's generous donations to Democratic political campaigns, including thousands to President Obama. The Wall Street Journal had revealed that Weissmann actually attended the 2016 election night victory party for Hillary Clinton. And you can't forget that Weissmann actually praised then acting Attorney General Sally Yates for defying President Trump's travel ban after she was fired. Now, aside from Weissmann's clear political bias, the longtime prosecutor has also been accused of employing aggressive, sketchy prosecutorial tactics, which led to the imprisonment of 4 innocent Merrill Lynch executives. That case was ultimately overturned by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals. And Weissmann's aggressive prosecutions also led to the downfall of the accounting giant Arthur Andersen. tens of thousands of people lost their jobs. And by the way, the Supreme Court, they overturned him again, 9-0 in that case. And we also have a brand new damning report tonight. Sarah Carter, who will join us in a minute, detailing even more misconduct, including a 1997 case about Andrew Weissman he was officially reprimanded by the judge for withholding evidence when he failed to disclose that a witness on behalf of the prosecution was also working for years as an FBI informant. This is in an organized crime case. In a memorandum, the judge reportedly described Weissman's conduct as, quote, myopic withholding of information, reprehensible and subject, perhaps, to appropriate disciplinary measures. Oh, that's the guy Mueller hired? Ultimately, no such measures were taken. Weissman's name was retroactively wiped from the complaint, and after a Weissman ally fought to remove his name. And more recently, Weissman was reported to the Department of Justice Inspector General and the Senate Judiciary Committee for, quote, corrupt legal practices. In fact, civil rights attorney David Schoen, he called for Weissman to be investigated for this alleged past misconduct. We did reach out to the special counsel's office for comments on Sarah's reporting. Shockingly, they don't answer our calls. The sum of all of this is this. The big news today, zero evidence, again, a year plus, no evidence that Trump, his campaign, colluded in any way, shape, matter, or form. We have been telling you this for over a year. Show us the evidence. We want to see it. Now it's time for the Democrats and the media to finally start telling the truth to you, the American people, about the situation. And that means to tell you about real collusion as it relates to Uranium One in 2009, as it relates to why would you ever allow Putin and his operatives to get away with that. And number two, as it relates to the bought and paid for phony dossier that was all designed to manipulate the American people. Tonight, we have comprehensive analysis. Sarah Carter, Greg Jarrett, Dr. Gorka, Judge Deneen Pirro, and much more on this busy special edition Hannity Breaking News Night. All right, as we continue, joining us now with reaction to tonight's opening monologue, Fox News contributor, investigative reporter Sarah Carter, Fox News legal analyst Greg Jarrett, former deputy assistant to the president, Fox News national security strategist Sebastian Gorka. All right. Greg, I'll just let you respond to everything today. And the only thing I'm going to say is the only thing shocking to me is that anybody is shocked because we have been telling everybody about Russia's work, influence, dirty deeds in this country now for a long time. And the rest of the media has been literally ignoring the biggest story in their life if they could open their eyes.
You know, this shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody who has read the DNI report that came out a year ago in January, in which they detail over the course of decades the Russians and before them the Soviets' efforts to sow discord and disruption and chaos in democracies, especially America. Why? They're an authoritarian government. They hate democracies. But you could hear the collective groan today across the nation among Democrats and the liberal media. They were so disappointed that when Rosenstein stepped to the podium, he said not a word about Trump-Russian collusion. You know, the FBI has been at it for a year and a half. They found not a shred of it. Mueller's been at it since last May and apparently hasn't found any evidence of it. But don't be surprised by what happened today. This doesn't mean that Mueller is shifting away from Trump. No. His eyes are squarely on Donald Trump. If they can't find evidence of collusion, Mueller will likely try to pursue a case of obstruction, which
right, but
doesn't
listen to what Trey
apply.
Gowdy said. Let's see the Comey memos. He said Exhibit A for the defense. Yeah. Exculpatory. Release them.
I'm sure it's absolutely exculpatory because at the time Comey was writing them, he didn't envision being fired. He's an arrogant guy, and it never occurred to him that he would be, although he certainly deserved to be.
All right, Sarah, at the end of the day, the Russians actually campaigned for and against Donald Trump in this whole thing. That's what an irony. They wanted to sow discord, just like I guess they were able to manipulate America and the Obama administration to get 20% of our uranium, which everyone else ignores.
Well, this is what they do. This is the Russians' modus operandi, and anybody who works in intelligence understands this. I think that this will go beyond. Look, this 16-count indictment revealed that they were doing this back in 2014 as far as our election system. But I think what we're going to discover is that the dossier was also part of their disinformation campaign, and that the Russians worked diligently to pass disinformation to Christopher Steele. They were utilizing Fusion GPS. And guess what, Sean? The media, journalists and mainstream media, American media, actually fed into this campaign, and they were unwittingly being used by the Russians over the past year. And that's really a shame, because that's something they should have been investigating from the beginning. This is how Russians do this. I mean, they were very successful at it.
TikTok, there's a lot more to come about how they were manipulated, how they were engaged with the Clinton campaign. Dr. Gorka, I think my favorite is the day they had a pro-Trump rally that they organized and an anti-Trump rally in the same city on the same day. That speaks volumes.
That's what they do. That's what they do. They disrupt other people's democracies. But let's be clear what happened today, Sean. Today, 13 Russians were indicted and 3 legal entities. Nothing's going to happen with that because they're Russians and they're over there and we can't extradite them. I've got a tip for Robert Mueller. Some other people messed with our elections and they're right here in America. There's Hillary Clinton, there's the DNC, there's Fusion GPS, and there's Hillary's lawyer. They messed with the election. They stole the candidacy from Bernie Sanders, and then they gave false information to a FISA court. So, Mr. Mueller, if you want to actually put some people in prison, start with the Americans that perverted our election here in America.
Well said.
And not only that, the damage to the Bureau and to the Bureau's reputation, that people within the FBI, now we know, we've seen clear evidence of that, Peter Strzok, Lisa Page, Andrew McCabe, others, James Baker, the general counsel, that there were people clearly within the FBI who had an agenda, and that was not their role. This is, you know, not the Politburo. This is not Russia, and that appears to be how it was being run.
Well, wait a minute. You mean McCabe and Comey and Strzok and Loretta Lynch and Page, just to name a few? You mean they had an agenda? You mean they exonerated Hillary? I can't wait for the IG report to come out. And if the IG does his job, then that means the fix was in, the process was screwed, and it was all set up and rigged from day one, Greg.
And we don't have to extradite them.
I've talked to 4 former FBI officials who are in close contact with current FBI agents, and the rank and file, are angry. They're not angry at the media for exposing this. They're angry at James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Rybicki, Strzok, Page, the whole gang, high officials in management at the FBI and some in the Department of Justice who have shredded the good name and hard work of the people who do the real job and carry a badge and gun and try to protect our lives.
We're getting to the truth in part without revealing sources and methods, to use a phrase of late, because of some honest FBI guys, some honest people in the intelligence community. Sarah, I know who our sources are in some cases. Dr. Gorka, as you look at this and we see, where do you think this Mueller is going? I see a guy that is blind in his ambition, that has hired a team of DNC, Obama, Hillary sycophants, anti-Trump activists that are like on a mission to destroy this president.
Don't forget one thing. Robert Mueller, escorted by his bosom buddy, Rod Rosenstein, went to the White House to interview for the job of director of the FBI with President Donald Trump. He failed. He didn't get the interview. The next day, Rod makes him special prosecutor, special counsel. Don't you think he's got an agenda? Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
This is revenge for Robert Mueller, but we can't let him pervert justice like everybody else on the 7th floor.
All right. What about Andrew Weissman? Not only did he get beaten by the Supreme Court, overturned 9-0, and the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, this piece you wrote today, Sarah, this guy twice has withheld evidence in cases, and this is what the New York Times describes as Mueller's pit bull?
Well,
and
I guess,
why is he even there?
Well, because he and Mueller have been longtime acquaintances, very close friends. They worked together. He was in the general counsel at the FBI under Robert Mueller. He has a lot of faith in him, I guess, that he can take a case and run with it no matter what. You'd have to ask, Special Counsel Mueller, why? Because if you look back to 1997, and he was directly reprimanded, and then his name was withdrawn from that reprimand, I mean, he was going to be reported to the bar. Not only did he not inform the jury that, the person that he had up there, the witness, was an informant for the FBI, he also had an FBI agent that was apparently dirty and who was indicted later for murders.
I want Robert Mueller to explain to America how a guy that withheld evidence in 2 cases and lost 9-0 in the Supreme Court, sent people to jail for a year, overturned by the Fifth Circuit, why was he ever appointed to be his pit bull? I want that answer tonight.
Well, it's a great question, and Robert Mueller will never answer it because the answer wouldn't be good. He wanted a pit bull, a guy who would weaponize the law.
Oh, he got it.
And who would bend and twist the rules. You could fill volumes with the complaints that have been filed against Andrew Weissman and the cases that have been overturned and his repeated attempts successfully to conceal evidence and intimidate witnesses.
I could keep you guys on all night. Great job, everybody. We'll absorb all of this. We'll reconvene on Monday. You guys have a great weekend. We still have a lot coming up. The FBI admitted today that the Bureau received a tip about the Florida school shooter last month. This is tip 2. They didn't act upon. Judge Jeanine Pirro will weigh in on that and, of course, our lead story tonight. All right, as we continue the special edition of Hannity, following those horrific shootings at that Florida high school on Wednesday, law enforcement reminded the public that if you see something, say something. But today it was revealed that last month the FBI failed to act on such a tip. According to a statement from the FBI, a person close to Nicholas Cruz contacted the Bureau's tip line in January 5th, and provided, quote, information about Cruz's gun ownership, a desire to kill people, erratic behavior, and disturbing social media posts, as well as the potential of him conducting a school shooting. Following the tip, the FBI failed to investigate this information. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, responded to the news saying, quote, I am committed to getting to the bottom of what happened in this particular matter, as well as reviewing our processes for responding to information that we received from the public. The Florida governor, Rick Scott, is now calling on Director Wray to resign. The Attorney General has ordered an immediate review of the process at the Department of Justice and the FBI, and Marco Rubio is asking for the same. Here with reaction, the host of Justice, Judge Jeanine Pirro. I understand everybody's busy. I understand that mistakes can be made. This costs lives. There's no other way to put it.
Sean, this is beyond the pale. Look, when I was a DA, I worked with the FBI. Let me tell you something about the FBI. What we're seeing now in the segments that you just completed about, investigating Russian collusion and creating documents for warrants that are not legitimate. This is the kind of thing that we're used to hearing about, where the FBI is focused on headlines and focused on things that really don't affect ordinary Americans. Now, the rank and file, they do their job, and they're fantastic. But
it never got to the Miami field office, Judge. Never.
Exactly. When someone says, I've got information on a kid who's got a bunch of guns, who's about to shoot up a school, who says, I am going to be a professional school shooter, I don't care if you're the FBI or from Podunk, you put on your instincts and your antennas and you say, let me try to find out who Nicolas Cage is. Sean, how many people with the name Cruz have the first name Nicholas? How many people with the name Cruz have Nicholas that's spelled with a K? There are 13 in the whole nation. I had a database as a DA. I could get this information.
But
and the FBI was too... Look, Sean.
But remember, you had the other guy, too. That actually got a screenshot of him saying, I want to be a professional school shooter.
Right, and the person in Louisiana didn't bother to do anything. They didn't have the wherewithal as a real cop to figure out what you've got to do. The complaint in January is a perfect example of what happens in the FBI. They do not link up with local law enforcement. Sean, I know it. I've seen it for 30 years. That's why we had 9/11.
Let me ask you this.
The FBI didn't talk to the CIA, and then we had 3,000 people dead. The FBI should focus on what their job is and what they should be doing as opposed to looking for headlines.
Let's go to today's news, today's indictment. I think that annoys me more than anything else is people are like, well, the Russians tried to influence the election. Well, we've been telling everybody about what the Russians did with Uranium One. We've been talking about Hillary's bought and paid for dossier. Nobody in the media is covering any of those stories. We have evidence and facts in those cases, and we knew about Facebook, we knew about Google. We've known this. Well, it started in 2014.
It started in 2014, this Russian so-called interference.
Maybe.
Yeah. And I'm sure it started even before then. But here's the real crime. The real crime is Hillary Clinton making $145 million, her husband pocketing $500,000 in cash for the sale of 20% of our uranium. And the real crime is, you look at Rod Rosenstein. Hey, he's in front of the cameras today. Why? Sean, this press conference was put together on 45 minutes notice. Why? Because they wanted to cover up or overshadow what we found out from the FBI. And where was Rod Rosenstein with the indictment having to do with Russia trying to do everything they can to get our uranium?
I look at Mueller's team, Obama donors, Clinton donors, DNC donors,